Welcome back to another Bellows Blades video, where today we're going to discuss something that I think does not get as much love as it deserves in the knife community or the knife world, and that is the subject of large pocket knives or large folding knives. So most folding knives are generally something that people carry around the 3.5 or less inch blade length, and so anything really much above that starts to become a large knife. But for today's discussion, we're going to stick at 4 inches and above is what we want to look at. So while we're kind of discussing this, I'm just going to show you some of the larger knives, probably kind of, well, it's a sampling of the top 7 or so knives that I have, large knives that I have in my personal collection, and kind of just discuss what are the benefits of a larger knife, what are the cons, is it something that might be right for you to carry, or, maybe not in your case. So, but anyway, I personally love large knives. It's something I've always enjoyed from the time I started collecting knives as a kid. I always just liked something about a big, beefy blade that just appealed to me. So we're going to go ahead and start with Spydercos, because Spyderco isn't really known for larger knives. They do have some models, though, that are the 4 inches or above. And so we're going to take a look at some of those. They have had other larger knives, even larger than the 4 inches in the past, but typically you're not finding those right now. Most of their, what I would say, their large knives is right around the 4-inch mark. So the first one we have is the Manix 2XL. Now, this is my modified version, and I do have a video of me modifying this knife if it's something you'd be interested in. But basically, I reprofiled the blade shape on this one and put a acid brass wash on it. And as a result of the reprofiling, I did lose just the tiniest bit of length on that, basically about 1/8 of an inch. So this thing is actually about 3 7/8 inches long right now on the blade. But this is a great knife. Of course, you have the cage ball bearing lock here, which makes it a little stiffer than some Spydercos, but still you can do the Spidey flick on that. Great knife, especially I feel after reprofiling it. I just really like the blade shape a little bit better, where it kind of mimics the military or paramilitary 2 style blade. The next one that we have is going to be, the next Spyderco that we have is going to be the Yojumbo. So this one also, if you're looking at it, you'll see that it doesn't look quite like most Yojumbos. That's because I did modify the handle on this one as well. The large bumps that were in the handle, the peaks, were not really working for my hand, so I did kind of do a skinny mod on that. But this is a great knife as well. This one comes in M4. Also originally had natural jade G10. Try to say that 5 times fast. And I did dye the scales as well. But I love this Warncliffe style blade with a very straight edge, razor sharp. M4 is a great steel, especially when it's coated to prevent the corrosion. But love that Spyderco as well. One of my newer additions to my collection is the Military 2. This version coming with the compression lock and the Big Brown Bear heat treated CPM 15V. This is amazing steel. If you get a chance to get some of Spyderco's 15V, absolutely do it. It just takes a wicked sharp edge. Actually, I think fairly easy to sharpen for such extremely high edge retention. Great knife. And it's basically just like the PM2, but bigger. And so for me, that's a win-win. I love the PM2, one of my favorite knives of all time. The Military 2, just the same thing, a little bit larger. I like the 4-inch blade on this. This actually comes in at, when I measure it, it's slightly over 4 inches. I'm getting about 4 1/16. So I don't know if that 1/16 of an inch makes much of a difference for you, but that's where it's at. So these are the 3 larger Spydercos that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and take those off the table for right now. The next larger knife that I've got is a budget option, which is the Ned Foss. I'll be honest, this thing has, I can't say too much about it because I don't know much about it because I've just not used it really. If I'm blatantly honest, it gets very little time, if any, in my pocket. It's still got a factory edge on it, hardly been used at all. I might have opened a couple packages with it. And the reason for that is this thing is just so heavy. It's like a boat anchor in your pocket. It's got what I assume it's D2 steel. I assume it's cheap Chinese steel. I haven't even used it enough to find out whether it'll hold an edge or not. So, I'm just being honest with you guys. If I use a knife, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll tell you. This one doesn't get used, so I can't speak too much of it. But if you're looking for just a big, beefy, heavy knife that's actually relatively cheap, and you don't mind the cheap Chinese D2, there you go. There's a Ned Foss for you. The next one I have is the Columbia River Knife and Tool Ritual. So the Ned Foss has a blade that comes in right about 4 1/8 inches at my measurement. And when I measure the Ritual, I'm getting right around 4 1/4 on the Ritual. So this is a pretty cool knife as well. I do have reviews of all these up, but it does have the assisted opening. It's just got that unique kind of Persian upswept style blade. More of a showpiece, honestly. This one is definitely not going to get a lot of use either. It's something I might wear just if I know I'm going to be around some people and I want to show off the knife. That's about it. It's not the most practical, but it looks cool. So we have these, two kind of moving up just a little bit, going up to the 4 1/4 here. And then this is where we get into really the king of large folding knives. So everything I've shown you here so far, Spyderco, kind of generic Ned Foss, Columbia River Knife and Tool. But when you think large pocket knife, that should instantly bring to mind one brand above all others, and that brand is Cold Steel, right? So Cold Steel makes some of the absolute largest folding pocket knives. So you can see the Ritual's a big knife. This is the Espada, the large version. They actually make a bigger version than this, the extra large, but this is just the large version, and you can see how it just dwarfs these other knives. So I'm going to go ahead and take those off the table here. So this is the Espada. The Espada is a great knife. I love it. This one does come with Aus 8 steel, so it is a budget steel. It's not the best steel in the world, but to be perfectly honest, Cold Steel does a great job heat treating really all their knives, but their Aus 8 is great as far as the heat treatment goes. So you get more mileage out of this steel than you should, basically, is what I'm saying. I wouldn't turn my nose up to it just because it is Aus 8, because they do a pretty good job with it and make it what should be a pretty, honestly, junky steel into a fairly decent steel. That's my opinion on it anyway. I have a lot of Cold Steel with Aus 8 and not had a problem with it. Now, I said that large knives kind of start at the 4 inches and above. I have a lot of 4-inch Cold Steels. I didn't bring those out because there's just so many of them that they make. So I'm really with Cold Steel, I'm looking at what is considered large for them. 4 inches is not really large for Cold Steel. So we're looking at the ones that they would consider large. The Espada is one of them. The Espada XL is actually ridiculously large. I do not have one of those, although I have thought about picking one up sometime. It's just hard to justify because it's so ridiculously large. It serves no purpose whatsoever that I can think of. This thing is almost too big to be used, but I have used it. It's right there. It's right there at the kind of the borderline of what is semi-reasonable. And then the most recent addition to my large knife collection is one that I just picked up because I got to thinking about this whole topic of larger knives the other day, and I realized I hadn't purchased a large knife in a long time, and specifically hadn't purchased a Cold Steel knife of any kind, but especially a larger knife from Cold Steel in a long time. And so my most recent acquisition is the holdout, the 6-inch holdout. So the blade here, 6 inches, although I think they're being a little generous with that. When I measured, it's just a hair under 6, but basically a 6-inch bladed knife. This is a massive knife. Overall, this thing is 13 3/16 inches overall. That is a really big knife. And the thing I like about the holdout, so there's a couple different knives that Cold Steel makes that are right at the 6-inch mark. But a lot of the other ones they make at the 6-inch mark have some downsides to them, in my opinion. So one of those is that most of them have liner locks. And if you're going to have a knife this large, you want this thing to be able to handle some abuse if it needs to. And a liner lock is just not a lock that I want to trust my life to. However, this comes with Cold Steel's Triad lock, which anybody who's being honest with you will admit that if it's not the strongest, it's definitely one of the strongest locking mechanisms on the market. So, I know there's a lot of Cold Steel haters out there, but I think even they have to admit if they're honest, that the triad lock is about as good as you get when it comes to solid lockup. And so this has that going for it. I like the fact that it comes with the triad lock. One of the reasons I picked this one over some of the other options. Also, better steel in it. Not all of their larger knives have the steel that this one has. This has S35VN in it. Some of theirs come with the AUS 8 or AUS 10, and some of them even come with the Chinese steel, and it's the 8CR13 MOV, I think. I always get those numbers mixed up, but I believe that's right. But you know which one I'm talking about. It's basically the Chinese version of AUS 8 is what I've been told. However, from my personal experience with that steel, not from Cold Steel, I don't have any of their knives with that steel, but from other manufacturers, and then comparing that to Cold Steel's AUS 8, it's not the same thing to me. It's not nearly as good as Cold Steel's AUS 8. So, however, Cold Steel is great at heat treating. Maybe they have mastered the heat treat on that Chinese steel as well, and it could be decent. Definitely a lot cheaper. You can pick up a 6-inch Cold Steel with that knife with that steel in it, and you can pick it up for about a third of what this costs. So it is cheaper, and that's great. But for me, the really sticking point was the locking mechanism. Liner lock for a knife this big, I'm just not comfortable with it. And so I went with the holdout, which I think I'm going to love. I will probably do some modifications to it, but I'll do a review on the holdout, and I'll talk about the modifications I plan on doing at that time. So basically, these are the knives that we're talking about, right? And I don't even know if I can get all these in frame or not, but we'll go ahead and throw them on the table here, and you can kind of just see the progression of knives as far as the size that they come in. So these are kind of my larger knives. This is my collection as far as the larger knives I have goes. Like I said, I have a lot of 4-inch knives, so these ones down on this end, really the only reason I'm including them is because they're Spydercos, and for Spyderco, this is about as big as it currently gets. These knives here with the 4-inch blades. So, and I have to admit, I love Spydercos. It's one of my favorite brands, if not my favorite brand. Absolutely love them. But when it comes to large folding knives, the king is Cold Steel. They've held that crown for a very long time, and I don't see anybody taking it from them anytime soon. So the question is, what is the purpose of a knife like this, right? What are the pros and cons? Does it make sense to carry something like this? Well, the very first thing you got to say is, you got to know your knife laws, right? There are a lot of states where not a single one of these knives on the table would be legal to carry. I hope you don't live in one of those states, but if you do, you need to know your knife laws. Don't go buying and carrying a knife that's going to get you in trouble with the law. So where I live, there are no limits on the length of a blade. So there's no problem here. In fact, recently laws were passed so that there's really not any knife restrictions in the state that I live in. So you can carry any kind of knife that you want to carry. The only one I'm not sure about would be if you had like a ballistic knife. I'd have to look into that. I've never had any interest in a ballistic knife, so I'm not sure if those are still illegal or not. At one point they were, but with the recent change to knife laws, it's possible those aren't anymore, but it wouldn't surprise me if they are. Anyway, I'm getting off track there. The point is, if you live in a state that gives you the freedom to pick any knife, would you carry something like this? So I'm going to say these 4-inch versions down here, I think these are perfectly acceptable for everyday carry. Some people are going to say they're too large. I don't have any problem with these. I don't think that they're super intimidating. There's a little bit of intimidation factor for people who aren't knife people when they see a knife with even a 4-inch blade. But it's not crazy. It's not completely out of the norm. And so I think you can get away with carrying one of these without too many problems. I actually love a 4-inch blade. I think it's about perfect for everyday carry. The shortest I like to go is 3.5. But I actually prefer the 4-inch blade. And the reason for that is you have more cutting edge to work with. So if you're working on something and you start to notice you're getting a dull spot on the area of the knife that you're tending to be working on, you can always kind of move up or move down on the blade, and you've got some more sharp steel to work with. So you've got more real estate when it comes to edge. I like that. If you have to use a knife in a self-defense situation, I'm not saying that's why you're carrying it. Maybe it is, but even if you're not, even if you're just carrying it because you want to have a knife on you for any task that might come up, having a larger blade does allow it to be used in a self-defense situation if it needs to be, and hopefully be more effective because you've increased or extended your reach. So I like that about a larger knife. Of course, there are some cons. They're heavier in your pocket if that's something that bothers you. If you're somebody who wears shorts, that probably could be a problem. I pretty much don't ever wear shorts, so I don't have a problem with that. Jeans and a belt, it's not going anywhere. I don't care how heavy the knife is as far as that goes. However, there is a comfort level with carrying a knife. So when you've got a knife like this that is the same size as these basically, but it's like 3 times heavier, I'm probably not going to carry this thing very often. I'd rather just carry one of these with the G10 that are a lot lighter. Now, when you get into the Espada or the holdout size territory, you know it's going to be a little bit heavier just because it's so massive. But honestly, Cold Steel does a good job with their G10 and keeping the weight down on those. So they don't carry like a super heavy knife. And I appreciate that. And I don't have any problem with Cold Steel knives in my pocket. They have fairly deep carry, so only a little bit of the tip of the handle is sticking out, so it doesn't look like you're carrying a massive knife until you actually pull it out and deploy it. So as far as carrying for everyday tasks, I think 4 inches is great. I think once you start getting into the 5.5, 6 inch territory like this, it's probably not practical for most people. It's honestly probably not even practical for me, but I just enjoy carrying a large knife. So once in a while, I don't carry them every day, but these type of knives do make it into my rotation once in a while. So anyway, I would say if you've never carried a larger knife and it is legal where you are, just, maybe try it. You might find out that you do enjoy having that extra real estate on the blade. You have a little more leverage. If you're doing heavy cutting tasks, that larger blade, bigger handle gives you more leverage. You've got more real estate, sharpened real estate there to work with. And like I said, it does extend reach if, God forbid, you should find yourself in a self-defense situation. Of course, like I said, cons, a little heavier. Another con is going to be that there is an intimidation factor, whether intended or not. So that can be good if you need to use it as an intimidating factor. But if you're just opening it, like pulling out a knife to open up a package and you're in a public area, you don't really want to freak everybody out. So there is that to consider. A lot of times when I carry a really large knife, like one of these here on this end of the table, I also carry a smaller knife with me as well, so that if I'm in that situation and I just need to open up something small real quick, I can use the smaller knife instead of whipping out a 5.5, 6 inch blade just to open a package. So that's something to consider as well. Sometimes if you're going to carry a knife this big, having a smaller companion with it isn't a bad idea. That all being said, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on EDC for large knives. Do you carry large knives? Do you enjoy carrying large knives? Or do you think it's absolutely ridiculous and you would never do it? I'd love to just hear some comments from the community. And what are your thoughts? What is the perfect EDC size for you? And what are your preferences? But anyways, guys, this was just a real quick video kind of walking through some of the larger knives in my collection. I just picked up the holdout. And that's what kind of got me thinking about it. I'll be dropping a review on the holdout here soon, kind of an initial review, and I'm probably going to be doing some modifications to the knife, so I might drop another video after it's been modded. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. If you guys enjoy the videos, please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on another Bellows Blades video review.